Hello and welcome to this Facebook live chat brought to you by Australia's #1 young university, University of Technology Sydney, in collaboration with YourStory. Young and global, well, these are the two words that define today's age of startups. And today we have with us someone whose venture definitely fits into this definition. So let's speak with Anubhav Jain, co-founder of GoDoctor, who also happens to be a UTS alumni, to know more about his entrepreneurial journey, the challenges, his key learnings, and much more. Meanwhile, you guys can drop in your questions and we'll be happy to get them answered by AJ. So should we start?
Absolutely, let's rock and roll.
So Anubhav, to start off with, I would like to know from you that what inspired you to start up? You have been a serial entrepreneur. So how has been the journey and what has been the inspiration?
So I think, initially when I started my entrepreneurial journey, it was about creating an impact and to do something that, we could always do and make history. That's basically the premises of the entrepreneurial journey. And it started off with hardware, then software, then consulting, and then product development. And now we're in the medical technology space. So it's basically gone into several various lines of business. And I feel that the entire journey has been one that has always wanted to be that where I challenge myself always. And I think if you want to become an entrepreneur, you really have to want to challenge yourself day on day.
So would you like to tell us more about the ventures that you have founded prior to GoDoctor?
Sure. So I started my entrepreneurial journey with a technology company where we were actually selling hardware products, and we set this up in the heart of Sydney in Capital Square, very close to the University of Technology Sydney. That's the great thing about it, is that the university itself is situated in the city, so you have access to everything within walking distance. And post that, got into software development, then a little bit of business process management consulting. And then decided to set up something here in India in the fast-moving consumer goods space, where we helped brands with their sales, marketing, and distribution. Within a year of that, someone approached me and said, hey, why don't we do something in the mobile technology space where we can build a mobile application without writing a single line of code? And I found that very fascinating. Being an engineer from background at UTS, that's what I did there. It was something that really intrigued me, that how could you build a mobile application without writing a single line of code? And with 3 other people, we set up this company in San Jose and Japan, and built the development team here in India and scaled that up, where I gave 4 years of time to that startup, and then GoDoctor started, which is where we're at right now, and that's what we're focusing on at present. Yeah.
So Anubhav, tell us about your journey to go to UTS.
It was a very interesting one, actually. When I finished my high school, my mom had actually studied in Australia, and she was like, if you want to go outside of Delhi, you might as well go to Australia. And I was like, wow, that's such a big jump. I was thinking of like Bangalore or some other cities in Delhi, or some other cities in India, but my mom said, might as well go to Australia. And that's how it kind of like started. And when I was like looking at courses within the Australian education system back in 2000, there were various options, and I had applied to several other universities, but one thing that I really loved about UTS was that it had a perfect balance between the practical aspects of things versus the theory, and that's something that really excited me. And the moment I got the offer from them, which was conditional to start off with, but after I got it, I really wanted to pursue that, and that's something that really made sense for me, the practical aspect of things with the university.
And what would you say that how has your education in UTS has helped you in your journey, both professionally as well as personally?
I think one thing that UTS really offers is something called true diversity. A lot of universities talk about diversity at large. A lot of American universities talk about it, and European as well. And the major difference is true diversity. And by that, I actually mean that you have a lot of people that travel from various parts of the world to Australia to get a high quality education. And they're literally, as they call them, fresh off the boat. And what they bring with them are the general nuances that come along with doing businesses in various regions. Whereas if you look at the American education or European education, you have a lot of local diversity, where you have people from various backgrounds, cultures, but they have that similar mindset of either being it American or European. And Australia and UTS primarily, because of that true diversity, has helped me build perspective more on a global scale rather than on a so-called diversity. It's purely true, and that's something that I think you can't put a price on. Yeah.
And what has been your most valuable learning from UTS?
There was this subject in UTS that got us to establish a group, and we had to complete a project, and we were to choose about 10 fellow students for that project. And a lot of my friends were going with the same nationalities and same friend circles, and I actually made a very different call to literally go with people from Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Germany, and India here as well, and Australia, local Australians. And what that really got me to experience was an absolute chaotic journey, because it's something that when you have so many people from different personalities or different cultures, it's like too many cooks spoil the soup, right? But because it actually was with so much diversity, it helped me build an understanding and helped me focus more on my communication as a human being, and try to get things done within the vast array of people that were part of that group. And that's one of the subjects that really helped me become who I am today, and has helped me travel the world as well to conduct business in various parts of the world. Yeah.
So, talking a bit about the challenges en route to your entrepreneurial journey, if you had to highlight a couple of them, what would they be?
The challenges, I think, especially when you're going through your day after day, and it's always where you kind of look back on your friends or your existing friend circle, and they're just doing a general 9 to 5 job, and you're spending 18 hours, sometimes 3 days in a row, you're up trying to solve a complex problem. It's times like those that you kind of question yourself, is this really worth it? Mm-hmm. And I think if you really believe what you're doing, it's something that would automatically answer to continue to push yourself. So I think the challenge is continuously motivating yourself as an entrepreneur. That's something that will always be there. That's why they say that sustainable entrepreneurs are alone a lot of times, and you have to have that in you to kind of self-motivate yourself and keep powering yourself. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And if you don't have many people to support you during the journey, which fortunately I do, it's very, very challenging. Yeah.
And GoDoctor is working towards the betterment of humanity through the use of technology and innovation.
Absolutely, yeah.
So tell us what was the inspiration behind getting or starting out in the medical industry?
It actually is a very personal and touchy story. What happened was, one of my co-founders, Rahul, he was on the bed for a couple of months, and he was at a point where he probably visited like 30-40 doctors, and he was getting very different opinions from the medical industry across the globe, actually, not just here in India. And he kind of contemplated, why can't we try and connect the right patient and the right doctor? And he came up through another contact of mine, and he asked me this question, can we do this? And I said, well, it's impossible to play the Indian matchmaker game with patients and doctors without knowing the background of the patient or the doctor. And let's not try and build Shadi.com for the medical industry. That's literally what we said. And then we kind of tried to dive in deeper and understand, what is it actually the reason behind variations of prescriptions or variations of diagnostics. And we then realized that information is not being shared within the medical community as how it is in other industries. And we then, with a lot of research more on a global scale, identified that there are not that many tools out there that allow doctors to freely express themselves within a closed network or a community where they feel safe. And that's where we came up with the idea of creating this build-up or this platform that allows the medical community to collaborate with one another, not just the doctors, but the hospitals, the labs, the pharmaceutical companies, the universities, the medical journalists as well. And the whole thought process was to create this safe space so that people can just share information and knowledge and help develop one another during their journeys in life. And that's where we started. And there are several other milestones that we will be focusing on in the medical industry, which will kind of cater to bettering humanity basically through technology and innovation. That's our entire thought process.
So, what would be your advice to the budding entrepreneurs who want to start out in the medical industry or any other industry per se?
I think one of the key advice that I would give would be don't really focus on a short gap problem or something that just pops up in another country and you just copy and paste it over here. It's not about a problem actually, it's about trying to identify a need. And when you identify a need for something, then it's definitely going to sell. And it may take longer than you expect, but that's what sustainability is about. It's basically following a need rather than a problem. So don't just do it because 3 other people are doing it. Do it because you really believe that there's a need, and your passion is something that will drive you to fulfill that need for whoever you're targeting. Yeah. So that's what I would suggest.
Very rightly said. Well, now Anubhav, it's time for some audience questions.
Awesome.
Should we take that up?
Fire away.
Okay. So we do have a couple of questions coming in about your experience in UTS and Australia. So the very first question that we have is, how was the experience studying in Australia?
I would say it was absolutely great. The entire experience at UTS, the faculty, the interactivity within the sessions is more practical oriented, and for some reason that's something that I always loved about the sessions at UTS. The classrooms are structured in such a way where they're not like the typical classrooms that everyone is comfortable with here. It's more group-wise setup where the round tables in classrooms, like who can expect round tables in classrooms, especially within the Indian context, and the complete exposure of industry is something that they really focus on, and it really helps in becoming more recruitable ready, if you want to call it that. So that's something that I really loved about the university, the whole practical exposure and experience of things, and that it's also situated in the city. A lot of universities that I'd initially applied to were like 30-45 minutes away from the city, and the biggest issue there is that you have to catch a bus from the main train station, and if you're staying in the college campus, then you're kind of like confined to the college campus. So the exposure to the beauty of Sydney itself is also limited. And UTS right now, I was there last year, and they've just reshaped their entire infrastructure, and they're making state-of-the-art library. Their whole campus has been reshaped. The classrooms are so modern. It's just something that you feel that it's amazing to see that universities reinvest into the development of their future students as well. So that's something that I really love about my experience in Australia, and it's so friendly in general. You don't feel like you're far away, and so many of my friends that went from India to Australia, they're still there because they just love it. They don't want to even come back. It's amazing.
So would you advise budding entrepreneurs to go to UTS?
Absolutely. I was really surprised very recently with their startup cell that they've set up. They've set up an entrepreneurial unit in the college itself, which basically allows you, if you have an idea, to basically go there and incubate it within the entrepreneurship cell. So that's something that I think really shows that universities are also embracing the whole startup mindset and culture, and it's kind of like the second Silicon Valley in some ways in terms of what they're trying to set up. And the whole environment around UTS and its campus is being built in such a way where it just gets you to spark innovation. I think that's something that they're really focusing on.
Interesting. So tell us more about your education in UTS, and what was the course like?
Yeah, so I actually studied a Bachelor's of Computer Science in UTS, and the course was over three odd years. And the beauty about the course was that you had some core subjects, but you had some electives that you have to choose, and you have the ability to really create a course based on your liking, rather than it being literally shoved down your throat that you have to do these subjects even if you're not good at them. And that's what really allows you to identify what you feel is your true purpose, or you're really good at and you just want to pursue. So the flexibility and the ability to build this dynamic program is something that I feel is amazing. Yeah.
So the next question is very much related to what you have already answered. It says, what was your main reason to choose Australia and UTS?
Well, I think, like I answered a couple of minutes back, but I think Australia in general has, when I was looking at it that time and even today, the best education. Infrastructure is amazing. The food quality is at another level. Another very good thing about it is that the people are so genuine and open and honest, and it's just something that you just have to be there to experience it. And I'm glad that I chose it, because before even traveling to Australia, I traveled to several places across the globe and got to experience very different cities, and it just has this slow yet fast pace of life as well. So you could really choose what you want. You know, if you want a fast pace, you could kind of like pace it up. If you want to slow it down as well, you can slow it down. So it has that amazing elasticity, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
And while pursuing your studies, did you get a chance to interact with startups or entrepreneurs in Australia?
Not as much as I would like to have. I primarily dealt with multinational companies ranging from Microsoft to some of the big tech companies like IBM and Logitech. But at the time that I left, which was in 2010, that's when things were kind of picking up in the startup space, and now it's like completely bubbling, right? So not at the time that I was there. Yeah.
And next question is, do you think Australian education helps in the Indian setup?
You know, I think this is a question that a lot of people ask me. I actually also happen to be an Australian citizen as well, and one of the things that I feel the Australian education gives is a very strong sense of practicality, and it also gives you a sense of who you are as a human being, so you always stay grounded. That's one thing that I think is really important. When we try and apply it to the Indian setup, I think it is still challenging to kind of tie it to recruitment as job, as an example. So if you were to think of applying for jobs here in India post that, you might find it challenging. However, if you're looking at it more from an entrepreneurship perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And given the new tie-ups within the Australian and Indian government, from an education perspective as well as from a business perspective, there are a lot of companies that are now looking at setting up here in India. Now, looking at some of the Australian companies that have been set up in India, and you look at their top line management, it's always Australian, because they have the values that they bring with them, and with that, the companies get defined here. So there's always that opportunity from a recruitment perspective in case someone doesn't want to take the entrepreneurship journey. So the great thing about universities nowadays and the Australian government is that they've got this 2-year program where after you complete your course, you can get a 2-year visa, which allows you to find and secure a job, which could be in your passion street, right? So there's always that potential opportunity, and it adds value because you've always lived here in India, so you kind of know what Indian business is about, and when you go there, you get to see these amazing systems and technologies that have been implemented there, and you can kind of bring some of that back and implement it here if you really have to and want to. So I think that conditioning would definitely add a lot of value to the Indian setup.
And the next question is that while pursuing your passion, which I believe is entrepreneurship, you did have your set of challenges, like you said. But what would you say have been the key ingredients that kept your belief firm, say in GoDoctor or any other venture that you have started earlier?
I think when you constantly are self-reflecting on a day-to-day basis, it just really allows you to see what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and you can always go back the next day and just correct it. And the ability to self-reflect on a daily basis has definitely allowed me to overcome those challenges, because what happens is sometimes when you don't self-reflect on a day-to-day basis, you actually bottle them up, and as they get bottled up, the challenges become, balloon size. And that's something that I think has really helped me in my entrepreneurial streak, where it's always breaking things down to the micro level detail, keeping them through that self-reflection lens, and just working at them on a day-to-day basis, scratching them off the list the very next day. And that's what keeps me going. Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks a lot, Anubhav.
Thank
Well,
you.
it was a pleasure to have you with us.
Same here.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.